All right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
I thought you were. You volunteered for
And
that.
don't you know, two firefighters.
I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01. This is the August 14th, 2023 meeting of the Winthrop Firehouse Building Committee at the Robert DeLeo Senior Center. And a roll call. Council President Lettieri.
Yeah.
Myself, President Paul Flanagan.
Present.
Karen Chavez.
Here.
Frank Constantino. Here. Kim Dimes.
Here.
Tom Chudina.
Here.
Josh Castellano.
Here.
Jill Dorr.
Here.
Town Manager Marino. Here. Larry Powers.
Here.
Chris Boyce.
Here.
Joe Aiello.
Here.
Charles Flanagan.
Here.
And Jonathan DeMauro.
Here.
Entire council is present. Thank you. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting as they were distributed. If anyone doesn't have a copy, they're over there at the table in front of Kim.
I'll make the motion.
Seconded by Karen Chavez,
Second.
seconded by Larry Powers. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Thank you.
We've got a couple of abstains.
We did?
Yeah, Larry Powers wasn't here. Chris Boyce wasn't here.
The abstentions from the members who were not here.
I was not here.
And Jonathan wasn't
Duly
here.
noted. Jonathan was not here. Duly noted. Thank you, Karen. The next item on the agenda is public comment. If you would like to speak, please stand, address and speak clearly into the microphone, please. No public comment. For the record, this is being broadcast live on WCAT. It is not on Zoom, but it is live on WCAT.
And it's the only public comment.
It is not on Zoom because this facility right now is not set up for Zoom, but we're in the process of trying to rectify that.
Just as this is the only public comment. There is no more public comment tonight. Okay.
I have not received any correspondence. Any other members of the committee receive any correspondence? Seeing none. Moving on to old business, the appointment of a committee clerk. Mr. Manager, do we have any progress or anything to add?
Not yet. We are gonna put it inside town hall, the rates that we talked about before, slightly over $100 per meeting, and then see if we can get a lot of that, but we haven't yet. I haven't heard of the person yet.
Moving right along, Frank.
Thank you.
We do want to thank Josh for taking the minutes.
Yes, so we'd like to thank Josh Castellano for his efforts last week in providing the minutes and taking care of that last week. Thank you, Josh.
Very welcome.
And a discussion on subcommittees.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I would say that at this point, we should table that until, keep it on the agenda, because it's going to be a need for it, but I think now it's important that we get to new business and the fact sheet and presentation of how we got here now.
So the subcommittees has been tabled to the next meeting. Moving on to new business. So I put together a small presentation of basically how we got here. And if you'll indulge me a couple of minutes. The need for a new fire station in the town of Winthrop is not a new concept. Several studies have been done throughout the years as far back as 1969, 1993, and 1997. These buildings have served the community well for over a century. The center station was built in the late 1880s, the Shirley Street station in 1905. Winthrop is not unique in that after decades of underinvestment and deferred maintenance on buildings that have far exceeded their usable lives, immediate action must be taken. The Winthrop Fire Department operates from two stations that are outdated, undersized, unhygienic, non-code compliant, and incapable of supporting the needs of a 21st century fire department. Older studies recommended either significant renovation of both stations or the construction of a single new central station. More recent studies, particularly 1993 and 97, state that renovation of the existing stations is not recommended. The town's 2 existing stations are among the oldest in Massachusetts. The 1993 study states that renovation is discouraged because, quote, even if the needed repairs, renovations, and modifications are made, the combined square footage of the 2 stations, both of which were originally designed for horse-drawn apparatus, is barely adequate for the department's present equipment, to say nothing of future needs. In the executive summary of the 1997 study, quote, in order to accommodate the needs of the Winthrop Fire Department now and through the next century, construction of a new central station is essential. The appropriately sized firefighting force and their requisite equipment require facilities far beyond the current size and character of the existing Winthrop Fire Department facilities. The 1997 study goes on to say the single-station concept was chosen over a 2-station concept. The advantage of a coordinated service provided by a fire department housed under one roof are compelling and valuable even at the cost of modest response time degradation. Assuming economies of scale, a single station will also achieve better construction value and be less expensive to operate. Guided by space needs and professional standards of the 21st century building codes, the NFPA and OSHA standards, the town council, along with the town manager and this committee, a consensus has been reached that a new central fire station must be built. In 2018, the town of Winthrop contracted Castle Booz Architecture to help determine the best location for and initial designs for a combined public safety building. Several possible locations were identified, predominantly by square footage needed. Approximately 10 possible locations were identified. Each location was scored and rated in several categories. Several sites were eliminated, flood zones, wetlands, etc. Castle Booz gave 2 presentations at public forums here at the Senior Center on 3 possible locations. The A Field location on Cross Street Veterans Road, the 7th hole of the golf club, and Pauline Street connecting the existing Center Fire Station to the existing police station. The A Field concept and the golf club site were eventually eliminated for their own shortcomings. The focus became the Pauline Street location. However, this site has its own significant constraints and considerations. Multiple pieces of property would have had to have been taken by eminent domain, including several single-family homes. There was also a significant grading challenge as well as the displacement and disruption of the fire department during multiple years of construction. In late 2022, a decision was made to forego the public safety building and move forward to a 2-phase process focusing on the more immediate need of a central fire station and addressing the needs of the police department in phase 2. Castle Booz was asked to look at the possibility of constructing a new central fire station at the location of the Wadsworth Building, 214 to 224 Winthrop Street, and the funeral home at 210 Winthrop Street. This location is centrally located within the town, provides ample room for both current and future needs, as well as housing the Department of Public Health. This location is also uniquely situated for the phase 2 of the concept, connecting the existing police station to the new central fire station, thereby creating the sought-after public safety building. The town's public safety building needs are well documented. Addressing these needs across multiple departments requires substantial public investment and sustained public engagement. This committee recognizes that this will be a substantial undertaking. However, this project is urgently needed. Delayed action will only bring increased costs for future replacement, pose additional risks to the well-being of our firefighters, potentially leave residents vulnerable in emergency situations, and further undermine the department's ability to meet Winthrop's needs efficiently and effectively. And basically, that's how we got to this point. I have been in contact with Castle Booz, the architect, to provide us with a consolidated version of the presentation that they made, so we would have visual aids to present to the people, so they would have a better understanding of how we arrived at this location. With that, are there any questions or comments from the committee? The next thing we had, at last week's meeting, we had asked each member to come up with some frequently asked questions. I'm sure we're all being asked the same questions as we go through our daily lives around town. People are concerned and they're asking questions. I would ask that if each member could come up with 5 or so questions over the next week and present them to me during the week, we can get them on the town website under an FAQ drop-down menu, so maybe some of these questions can be answered and we can put to bed some of the misinterpretation of what's going to happen. Council President Lettieri has created a template for this. These are potentially some of the questions that you may come across. We can add certainly any that you find.
So if you take a look at this, this is just basically, a trifold sheet that will have numerous questions. This could be changed throughout the process as we get more questions, or questions we might not have even thought of, or people haven't thought to ask. For example, in this, and we haven't even done the answers yet, we will do the answers, but this is, something that I'm just suggesting. The questions that we've been asked the most, or that I've heard the most, one would be, what would the impact on my taxes be if this debt exclusion for the new firehouse is passed? Why not, number 2, why not the middle school site? Another question, what is the town's obligation to existing tenants in the Wadsworth building? Is there a plan for the police station? Why not remodel the existing firehouses? What would the effect be on the town's ISO rating? I'll ask the chief to explain that in a minute. What is the time frame for the new firehouse project? What is phase 2 of this project? Does the first phase include more than just a fire station? And then on the back, it would just have all the public meeting dates, all the public hearing dates, locations. For more information, contact and a list of the committee members and contact information. So again, just a quick fact sheet. I think it's incredibly important. There's been a lot of, some misinformation, some just misunderstanding. But it's important just to get the facts, and I think that's the main goal in this first phase of this committee over the next 3 months, is just to inform the public. There's going to be questions. We're going to do the best we can to give the actual answers. There's going to be people that still choose not to support it or to support it, and that's everyone's right to do that. We just want to make sure it's done on proper information. But we will ask the committee members, this is just obviously a mock-up. If we want to discuss some of these questions here tonight, to look for answers to fill in, that's fantastic. If we had other questions that we could think of off the, that you guys have been thinking about or have been asked that are not on these 9 questions, those can also be discussed tonight. So I'll leave it to the chair as to how we wish to progress with this.
Thank you, Mr. Lettieri. So as far as the ISO rating, so one of the things that came up, one of the questions that I've been asked a lot is response times. Response times, if we no longer use the Shirley Street station, then increase response time to the more remote parts of the town, particularly Point Shirley or the Upper Highlands. The standard that we follow in the fire service is an NFPA 1710. NFPA 1710 determines the response time based on the density of your population, the size of your fire department, and whether it's career or call volunteer type department. For us, we're mandated, or the standard for us is to be from time of alarm to time of arrival is under 5 minutes and 20 seconds. 5 minutes and 20 seconds is a very long time in a town that's 1.6, 1.5 square miles. We can certainly get anywhere in town and comply with NFPA 1710, and that's 90% of the time. What we'd like to bring up at times is if you're down at Point Shirley and normal responding engine is already tied up or in another location, you're already getting an engine coming from Pauline Street. They're already coming from the other side of town. The ladder truck only fits in the building on Shirley Street. If you need the ladder truck, it's coming from Shirley Street, even if you're on Willis or Pleasant Park or Amelia. It's coming from Shirley Street. We're still getting there in well under 5 minutes and 20 seconds. It's a very long period of time. The ISO rating is every 5 years an independent insurance company comes out and they score your community, your fire department, from 1 to 10. 1 being the best score, 10 being the worst score. 5 is the median score. That's the score most given out. Most departments are 5s. We're a 4. We have a very good score, and Closing the Shirley Street station and moving us into a single new station, state-of-the-art facility, certainly wouldn't hurt our ISO rating and could only help our ISO rating. If anybody from the committee would like to take on any of the other questions?
Well, I can take on the Little League field. When we first started considering, my name's Paul Flanagan, I'm the retired fire chief. Chief Wiley sat when we were going through with the same architect, putting a firehouse on the Little League field with reconstruction of a new field at Fort Banks on the outside of the soccer field. And the whole thought of, the District 1, the beach apparatus responding out onto Veterans, the center engine coming out onto Cross Street seemed great, but again, it was the floodplain. So there was going to be over $1 million worth of site work. The firehouse with a potential police station, I think that was a public safety building, Chief. And it was a struggle to get it all to fit. But the problem is, if you do take sea level rise and everything else into consideration, the blizzard of '78 filled the football field, covered the golf course, the whole thing. But from my time on the department in '78, the worst storm was the blizzard of '78, the no-name storm. We've had some storms that have flooded from the harbor side versus the ocean side since we had beach renourishment. But the thought of putting all your public safety people on a hill for that catastrophic storm, now we can't get anywhere. We're sitting on top of the hill surrounded by water. So that was quickly ruled out. Although the concept was good, location, because again, we said the last meeting, I think the study in the 80s was done in the center, the true center of Winthrop is the tennis courts in front of the high school. So that location didn't wander far from that. But the thought of all your public safety people being stuck on top of a hill in the catastrophic flood just made no sense.
As long as we just want to discuss something, maybe either Council President Lettieri or Town Manager Marino would like to go into more in-depth, why not the middle school site? I mean, that is, I'm hearing that constantly.
Well, I'll start. So the middle school site, obviously has been brought up a lot. The middle school site, we do not have a schematic for. It was never asked to be designed. They've never done any soil samples. The size of the middle school site, I'm just assume you were thinking of the middle school site and kept the rink where it is, because that seems to be the consensus of the council over the past, to leave the rink. If you took the middle school, the auditorium, and the gymnasium out, you have roughly, not exact, roughly 92,000 square feet. And you have what we were told 4 years ago in regards to the middle school, not that it was a negative, not that anything couldn't be overcome, was they had a slight concern about the foundation, because the foundation required to house fire equipment and apparatus is substantial, and there's water running underneath the middle school. So that was one concern, not a deal breaker. The other concern, obviously, is that it is on parklands. And again, not that it's unsurmountable, but it would have to go through a court process. You'd have to go through the Massachusetts State House to ask for a home rule petition to change the composition of the land. So that's another obstacle, time-consuming. Is it impossible? No, but it's another thing. The other thought with the middle school site that was pretty much unanimous among past councils is that, the thought is that it would be some sort of a income-producing vehicle for the town. There was also a plan that we are going to make a presentation on after the first meeting in September to discuss a potential plan for the middle school site, but it's something that I've talked about at 3 of the past 5 council meetings. Any potential revenue site, obvious source would also have to, be offset with other potential expenses, right? I mean, if you bring in $100,000, but it cost you $150,000, it's not really a good source of income, right? So we wanted to come up with a proposal that Doesn't have a huge effect on the school population because, we have 3 beautiful, relatively, I consider new, I guess they're 24 years old now, a couple of them, but still considered new. But they're pretty much approaching capacity, not that we're going to have that incremental development like every town has. But I think it's very hard for us to absorb 150 units at one time. So that's been, to me, a detriment for that. But the main thing, again, long answer longer, is the town feels that there should be some sort of an income-producing vehicle on that site. Also, the size of the site, 93,000 square feet. The size of the proposed site is roughly, give or take 50,000 square feet. The footprint of the firehouse, as proposed, the footprint is 16,000 and change square feet. I think the other thing, if anybody had been or was talking about anything at the middle school side, I think it always involved, and I think it would have to involve, to me, a public safety facility. There's no way to connect a fire station, if that's the goal, which it has always been. There's no way to connect the fire station at the middle school to a police station at where it is now at Metcalf Square. So I think it would have to be a composed site. So it's a pretty big footprint to put if you look at the proposed site now, which is roughly 50,000 square feet, and the existing police station is roughly 15,000 square feet, it's, that facility, phase 1, phase 2, would include a public safety facility that's roughly 65,000 square feet. That still leaves an extra, if it was down at the middle school, it would leave an extra 35,000 square feet. Could be used for parkland, could be used for open space. I don't know how much space that is to develop that you would have any sort of income stream. Also, the cost, which I'll kind of dwarf into another question here. We're always cognizant of the cost, right? I mean, there's been a lot of inflation, there's been a lot going on. This is not a cheap project, it's a $40 million project. I think when Chief Riley talked about going back to 1993 and such, there was a plan back then to build a firehouse, I believe, and I think the cost then was $3.5 million. So times, they are a-changing. But anyway, so the cost of this proposed project is about $40 million. A proposed public safety building would be approximately $70 to $75 million. So now it goes back to cost. So best estimates right now, and please don't hold me to this, but every calculation I've done, and with the help of the assistant CFO of the town, the average housing value in Winthrop as of now is $625,000. Based on a $625,000 value, a 30-year bond on a $40 million would cost you roughly 73 cents a thousand, or I'm going off the top of my head, $457 a year. So that would be the approximate cost of this project. And again, so if you had for easy math, if you had a house worth $1 million, million times 73, so $1 million, 73 cents on 1,000, it would be $730. So that's easy math. But the average house would be $457 a year. And if you're talking about a public safety facility, at one stage, at one phase, it would roughly be a little less than double that, so about $800 to $900 a year. The other thing to look at over the next 2 years is the ATC school, the At the Cummings School, will be coming off the tax rolls, I believe, in fiscal '25. And then in fiscal '26, the Miller Field project will be coming off the tax rolls. Those two projects together, and again, how times have changed, and when you're looking at school building, we did get reimbursement for schools too. The ATC school is roughly $85 a year in your taxes, and the Miller Field project is the ATC is roughly $70, and the Miller Field project is about $85. So when those two come off the tax rolls, which would be before this fully hits the tax rolls, if we did a project like this, you do not go out and bond $40 million right away. When you put the shovel in the ground, you do it in stages, as we've done with every other, all three of the schools that we've done, including the Miller Field project. So it's done in stages. So this would not fully hit the tax rolls until approximately fiscal '26, potentially even '27, but probably '26. By that time, you would have the other two coming off the tax rolls. So, play with numbers all you want, but it would be roughly a 35 to 40% savings of that $457. And the other reason why doing this in a phase project, doing a phase one with this firehouse, which would include ambulance service and such, and to do phase two, which would include the police station and have that connection. Phase two would be done in a time frame where it would almost coordinate with the new middle high school coming off the tax rolls. And if it is roughly the same project, it would have little effect on the taxpayer. So we're trying to be as cognizant as we can of just the financial times and people's pocketbooks and such, where I could say it now since I'm older, but we have an older population in the town, and you want to be extremely cognizant of their needs and their ability to provide for the town. So, that answers those two questions, tries to answer those two questions in a nutshell. And to just quickly go over number 3 with the town's obligation to existing tenants, because those are pretty much the big 3 questions, right? The existing tenants, the cost, and the potential middle school site. So the town not only has a moral obligation, but has a legal obligation to facilitate the move of any tenants to any new location, right? So if somebody was moving to a different location, the town would physically be responsible for moving everything they had to do. And it could even include retrofitting a location for a business. I know for a fact that the town has already talked to owners of the biggest renter there, the meat market, and there's already talks going on about potential locations for the meat market. So, and I think you'll hear more about that over the next 30 days probably. So we're trying to hit a lot of rolling targets at once here, but I think in the end, you're going to see something that is very good for the tenants of the building. And then the other piece of property that was sold is part of this process. These properties were not sought out by the town. We had indications that the owners of these 2 properties were willing sellers. And then when we looked at the location and looked at its proximity to the police station, it all kind of fell into place. But I'll let anybody else want to address any of the other questions.
I have a couple questions. They're not answers to questions that we already have here, but social media, are we going to handle that? Or are we going to just our webpage and our contacts? Will that be our primary way of? Yeah, we're going to stay off social media completely.
We're not a campaign. We're not our goal is, our purpose is not to tell people how to vote or to tell people, our purpose is just to disseminate information. And, we want to be as transparent as possible and answer as many questions as we can.
But as a committee, we're not going to participate or have a web page, a page on Facebook or social media or anything like that.
Usually in the past, when we've done new schools and such, there's been committees formed within the citizenry that would do something like that. That's not our purpose.
Okay, all right. And then, in answering questions from the public, say somebody, emails me and wants an answer or is inquiring, are we going to have standardized answers that we should be using as a whole for the committee, and that we're not saying, well, so-and-so told me this, but so-and-so told me that, and I just foresee that coming into play.
I think hopefully that's what we're trying to address with these frequently asked questions, is that there
Okay.
would be
We stay within that realm of what we decide is with the
And if we don't
information.
know, if we're not sure, we could certainly bring it up at a forum like this and get a consensus opinion on what the answer would be.
And then also just one other question, with the tenants and, in particular the meat market, should we, if people are inquiring, or should we be redirecting that to the town manager for more information, or that they should, kind of advice should be given if we're?
Again, we as a committee are not negotiating with the meat market or anything like that. Like I've said, the town manager has already been in contact and had at least one meeting that I know of with the owners of the meat market. And I think it was a very good conversation. And yeah, I think you'll hear more about that over the next, as information comes out, but not necessarily,
Right,
we're not.
exactly, okay.
And just, Kim, just point of information, when you use social media,
Yes.
you could be in conflict
Right.
with the open meeting law.
No, I don't
No,
use it,
I'm
so that's
just,
why I'm
just for
yeah.
a point of information, you have to be very, very careful, because you know how it goes.
Yes, I do.
I don't do Facebook, but it's conversation. Now, we may be violating.
Absolutely.
And the next thing we know, the Attorney General or Secretary of State will be coming and looking at us.
Sure.
Mr. Constantine.
Yeah, I have a question relative to the revenue, the potential revenue, since there's nothing on the middle school site, unless the town is receiving revenue from the hockey rink. Can you talk about the potential revenue that might come from the middle school with some project that is yet to be identified? I'd like to know what the revenue is to the town from Kirby Funeral Home and the Wadsworth Building and its tenants, and what loss that would happen when the building is taken down and the fire station construction is underway, and I imagine that would be a period of at least 3 years. So is there revenue coming to the town from both of those businesses that are on Winthrop Street? And how is that offset by yet an unknown development at the middle school site?
I could answer that. Sure. So, and again, this is public information, so I'm not saying anything out of school. I believe, and I could be off a few dollars, but my understanding is the Kirby Funeral Home pays taxes to the town of Winthrop, right, which is revenue, which is roughly $10,400 a year. The Wadsworth Building also is a piece of property that pays taxes to the town of Winthrop. The property is technically two parcels of land. It's basically the building, and then the parking is basically a second parcel, but it's the Wadsworth Building. So the Wadsworth Building in totality pays roughly $17,400 a year in taxes. So you're talking somewhere a little south of $28,000 in revenues. The businesses don't pay taxes. The businesses generate, or some of the businesses there would generate a meals tax, which is relatively small. I wouldn't have the exact number, and it would, I think, only be the meat market and that business that would generate revenue such as that. And, I don't want to say we haven't talked about, we haven't maybe talked in detail, but like I just said, I've said 3 times over the past 2 months at council meetings specifically what a proposed plan would be for the middle school, and I will make a formal presentation of that the first meeting in September, and that would include potential revenues far exceeding this potential loss.
And has a figure been established, as to what the potential revenues would be from Project A, Project B, Project C?
Yes, I think,
at the middle
well,
school site?
there is no C or B, there is just one right now, but which is not the scope of this committee, but the proposal I will be making would potentially generate revenues of the town in excess of $175,000 a year. It would have no impact on schools, and it would be an extreme stimulus for businesses throughout the town.
Well, there's a question of social revenue. I think the social revenue is the customer base for Patsy's business and the frequency of many customers using his business. There are other businesses there as well, but his is primarily the main one that is attracting a lot of individuals throughout the community. What displacement and what time period would be involved for his relocation and continuance of that service at a suitable site large enough to accommodate this business?
First of all, the goal of the town, I won't say the committee, even though it is, but I mean officially, the goal of this town is to make sure all the businesses, but we'll specifically talk about the meat market because that is the topic, basically. The goal is and always will be to make sure that the meat market stays in Winthrop as long as it would like, and that it is in a better financial position now than it has ever been in. That's the goal, that's my goal, and I know it's the town manager's goal, and I'm sure it's the council's goal as well. And I feel really confident that that will happen. Yeah, the goal is not to lose any business. I mean, obviously, there's the meat market, which is predominantly the biggest business in that area, but there are other smaller businesses that we are cognizant of all of them, and we're not trying to, displace is a different terminology than to eliminate. We're not trying to eliminate any of them. We're trying to do what's in the best, we're trying to propose what's in the best, what's for the best of this town, all its citizenry, the pocketbooks of the town, the future of the town, the safety of the town and such. And we're just trying to put a plan together that we feel checks as many of those boxes as possible. There is no perfect plan, but after looking for many years at many different options, I believe with all my heart this is the best plan for Winthrop, and I believe with all my heart it will be a very good opportunity for the meat market. And I just want to have the time to convince the citizens of that, or, to let them feel that I've been honest or I haven't, and I know I've been honest.
Mr. Flanagan.
Chuck Flanagan, retired captain, Winter Fire. With all the discussion and emphasis on revenue streams, has any numbers been put up of what the buildings of the existing firehouses and their land would be worth if the town was to commercially sell those? Because I think we need to include that into the overall picture also.
I'm not sure if dollar values have been placed on those yet, but we could certainly do that. We could have an assessment or estimation done.
Should be in the equation also.
The Shirley Street station would certainly be ripe for redevelopment, but the center station would probably be limited in somewhat because, first of all, the size and scope of the footprint, but second of all, the architectural design of the building in a historic district would probably have to stay just the way it is. You certainly couldn't raise the building or take it down.
Yeah.
Is the fire station right now designated A in a historic district or B a historic structure?
When I looked on the state website, I did not see it listed as a historic building, but it is in a historic district. I don't know if the town has made a declaration of it as a historic building.
I don't know, but I was under the impression it's a historic building, but it might not be. But I know the goal of the town manager, and the council is to make sure that that building stays in that form. It could possibly be developed, but it would be, I mean, to me anyway, it would stay looking the way it does.
Yes.
Is that a component of the report that this committee should be answering at some point?
This committee doesn't have the scope of doing that, but I think a recommendation from this committee would be absolutely in order to make a strong recommendation that regardless of the two pieces of property, not just focused on Pauline Street, but what their thoughts are as far as going forward with the disposition. We obviously don't want to be in a situation where, if this was to pass, and this potentially is a, 2-year project, that 10 years from now, we're saying, okay, we're going to start, we're looking at the police station, but we also want to see what we're going to do with the Shirley Street. Yeah, we don't want this to turn into a lingering situation. And I think, as Chief said, I think the Shirley Street location is pretty prime for development, if you've seen what's going on down there. But yes, to answer your question briefly, I think it would be absolutely prudent of this committee to make a strong recommendation to the town as to their thoughts of the disposition of the 2 fire stations.
Jim, to go back to what Kim had started on, I had several people ask questions, and it dawned on me that we should probably have certain facts available to us. Things like just eminent domain, like what are the rules the town has to follow? Because I've had several people say, well, if we're going to use eminent domain to take these properties, why can't they do that for the piece across from the rink, towards the center? Why can't it be done for the parcel across the street? Well, you know, and we talked a little bit about, I think Tony touched on, about you have to be able to negotiate with the owner. I mean, like, what are the exact rules behind that, you know, so that we're providing factual answers? Even things like the historical district versus historical building, I think it's already been said that the, it's not, neither of these structures are historical buildings. And I mean, the Wadsworth and the funeral home, they're not historical structures, they're just in historical district, which is significant. They're both privately owned. If they went to, you know, if they were going to be developed by a privately owned person, they could tear those buildings down. You know, I think we need to have those facts so that it's clear to the public.
Any other questions from the committee?
I got one, Chief.
Jonathan?
Hello, I'm Jonathan Demaro. I'm the Vice President of Winthrop Firefighters, Local 1070. I'm here to represent the union. One question I've been getting, and that's not on here, it actually requires, how do the members of the Winthrop Fire Department feel about the new fire stations, and also what are our main concerns? There's roughly around 36 of us right now that work on shift, and most of them, 90% I would say, is are Winthrop residents. You know, they have their own feelings about this, but as a union, we've definitely come to a agreement that we need new, because our main concerns, and it's concerns throughout the fire community, is cancer and having the proper equipment to help make this town safe. Right now, you know, we definitely are on the side of we need something new, because right now these firehouses that we have are not sufficient for us to do our job. Thank you.
Any other comment or question from the committee?
The only thing I'd add, this is Chris Boyce, Chairman of the Planning Board. I think there's a few comments on overall financial accounting and cost of the project. I think it would be helpful, I mean, your analysis of the taxpayer's impact and the long-term debt exclusion is helpful to make a vote for people, but I think to understand the cost of acquisition of these two properties weighed against potentially the cost to demo the middle school, you know, land that's already owned. So I think just giving people, arming people with the facts of what each of these may cost. Certainly sounds like, you know, a 30-year bond is a prudent way to go, but lowering the overall price tag may allow more work to happen in one phase, or may reduce the overall impact to taxpayers. So eminent domain being what it is, we're still paying probably fair market value for the real estate. I think when we understand what the market value is of that real estate pre-demolition, I think weighing that against middle school as an asset that the town owns is, will be helpful for all the taxpayers to understand.
All right. Any other question or comment from the committee?
One more question.
Yes, Kim.
Has anyone researched any potential grant money that might be available for
There is
for
no
public
grant money
safety?
available right
Nothing?
now.
Okay.
Nothing. It has been addressed. Other communities, I reached out to other communities that are in the same process. There are no grant dollars available right now.
There's also the question of the historical value of the Wadsworth building as it stands right now, and/or the materials within the building, if in fact it is going to be taken down, and whether or not those materials, in a way that was done with the Cummings School, for example, were incorporated into the new design. Those blocks and all of the materials that we see are pretty substantial, probably quite sturdy for another 200 years maybe. But I think that it would be something that the architect should take into account, and this committee should at least consider that question. The other point is, it seems critical to me that the residents of this town, the public, should know every step of the way what is going to be resolved for the displacement of the businesses that are in there, and what the taking process is going to entail, and then what kind of construction time is going to be involved in doing the station itself, both in terms of demolition, tie-ups on Winthrop Street, for example, and also consider the fact that we're now going to be down to one funeral home. All due regard to Warren and his family, I know them very well, but losing a funeral home and leaving just one here in town for the services of our community, is a question that probably should be addressed.
I had a fairly extensive conversation with the architect that we're using right now. Isn't necessarily the architect, if this passes, that we will be using for the project going forward. But the architect that we're working with right now, I've spoken to extensively about taking actual stones off the front of the Wadsworth building and incorporating them into the entrance and the building that we're looking. The idea is to make the building look like it's been in the neighborhood for an extended period of time, like it's been there for 30 or 40 or 50 years, not something that doesn't blend in with the neighborhood. We've took into consideration it's across the street from the Methodist Church, it's next door to the police station, it's in the town square, it's in Town Hall, Metcalf Square, the library, the town hall, for kids only. A lot of work has gone into that neighborhood, and it's a beautiful historic neighborhood. Any project that's going to go there is going to look like it blends in the neighborhood. Anything else from the committee?
Just moving forward, Chief, I think it's a must for this committee. I think we can definitely sell a firehouse once the question of what's going to happen at the middle school and what are we doing with Patsy. Because saying, well, we got a plan for the middle school, and not saying it's all President Lettieri's fault, he just happens to be president right now, but people said, oh, we've heard that. We've heard that because when former superintendents were there, well, as soon as we get our new high school approved, and they were using the middle school as a temporary high school, then it's clear for you guys to jump in there as a new firehouse, and the time just go. Then we ran into 2008, there was no money. Then we ran into a public safety building. But I think those, if this committee doesn't do anything before our next meeting, we should try to find out, we would like to say, well, Patsy's in negotiations with the town or whatever, because you can't get anywhere with people. I mean, even if we went in this room tonight, who's in favor of a firehouse? If Patsy's happy, it will change the vote tonight. So I think those are questions that we have to get answered as quickly as we can, because November's not far away.
As Council President Lettieri stated just a few minutes ago, the town is, it's no secret, it's been stated here publicly, the town is in negotiation, trying to get a relocation. They have a legal and moral obligation to all of the tenants in the building to relocate them. And they're in the process of doing that right now. As far as that, and again, the council president has said there'll be a formal presentation in September, after the first meeting in September, laying out exactly what their proposal is for the middle school project. Just so everyone knows, this goes back, the middle school project, the middle school property goes back several iterations of the council, previous councils, previous town managers. That was always earmarked as some kind of revenue source or revenue stream for the community. It was not to be used, or not this, but it wasn't going to be, it was an economic source of revenue for the town. It wasn't going to be a location for a public safety building. Anything else from the committee?
Chief, just one other thing. It's not on here, but it has been discussed, and I've been questioned on it. People said, why not renovate the two stations? Well, most of the stations that are being renovated are like 50 years old, and were originally built from motorized fire apparatus. Neither one of our stations were motorized fire apparatus, even on the radar screen. So there's so many things that just not, that's the reason.
We have reports going, we have a study that was done in the 1969. These stations were not, they were designed for horse-drawn apparatus. We have to have custom-built apparatus to fit into our stations. We pay an additional, significantly more money to buy apparatus that fits into our buildings. The town appropriated a few years ago, we were in need of a reserve piece of apparatus. They appropriated $50,000 to buy a reserve engine, which, believe it or not, is a substantial amount of money. You can get a nice engine for $50,000, used one. But we couldn't find one that would fit in our building. There were plenty of them that were available, but they had to be less than 9 feet 6 inches high. We couldn't find one anywhere. There wasn't one to be had. We had to custom order a ladder truck to fit into our station. The ladder truck right now won't fit into the center station. If there was a catastrophic situation on Shirley Street, if something happened, if the station had to be closed, we have to store our apparatus outside. We right now store apparatus off-site. We have trailers that we need for response. They're stored down Deer Island. Technically, they're not even in the town of Winthrop. They're in the city of Boston. We store apparatus and equipment outside, degrading it over a shorter period of time because we have nowhere to keep it. We have $200,000 worth of turnout gear that we were mandated to buy, that we were told specifically, you cannot store it on the apparatus floor. We have no choice but to store it on the apparatus floor. There's nowhere else to put it.
Does the town pay for that storage also?
No, we store it on the apparatus floor. You know, one
No, I
point.
mean, you said you had stuff down at Deer Island.
No, we do not. No, they do not. You know, one of the questions that came up, again, we discussed it last week, a setback of the building. So the building as currently drawn, and it would be similar but not exactly the same, as currently drawn, it would be set back significantly from Winthrop Street, alleviating any concerns about turning radiuses or ability to enter and close from Winthrop Street. You know, some people have said it's much too narrow to pull out onto. Winthrop Street's much too narrow to pull fire apparatus out onto. We'll go down Shirley Street and see where we pull the ladder truck out of every day. It's significantly narrower than Winthrop
Especially
Street.
with an ice cream parlor there.
And we do, you know, the rear tires on the ladder truck are replaced almost annually because we drag those tires sideways coming out of the station and turning the wheels so hard. So that's an added expense to us. We will be able to, in this building as it's drawn now, to pull the apparatus completely out of the building and not be on the sidewalk. As it is right now, when we come out of both stations, we roll out the door, we're immediately on the sidewalk. The sidewalk is the front door of the building. It's a safety issue as well. We'll be able to house all of our equipment on site, do indoor training. We'll be able to, enough space for us for expansion into the future, the potential of us running, and it's years down the road, but the potential of us to run a BLS ambulance service out of the fire department, also an economic stream of revenue for the department, for the town. None of that is feasible on the footprint or in the two buildings that we're in now. No, we never go through that way. Yeah. Say that again?
They should know that you never use that.
No, we never, as Karen has brought up, we discourage, we never go across the parking lot of the Shirley Street into the other building. We discourage going across private property at all, at any times. We do not go through to get to Veterans Road. We have prescribed routes that we follow on and off of Shirley Street. Mr. Constantino.
Question from a design point of view, in my training and background, and maybe some of the other trained architect, developer, design folks might agree with this, but is this scheme going to be presented as I see it now, or is there room for refinement to present perhaps something a bit more massaged to serve some of the aesthetic, visual, and operational aspects of this? I had mentioned at the last meeting that there's one segment that is facing the south on the, within the Kirby parking lot zone that could be easily used for solar, for example. Are there other aspects of this in terms of the appearance of the building as it looks to me now, which is extremely schematic, not very appealing, whether that design can be massaged to some degree, particularly if we're going to be doing any kind of presentation drawings as a way to persuade the public that this is something we want to have them commit to.
I know that when we built the middle school, high school, we made many, many, many changes to what the building looked like from what HMFH originally showed us. Not only what the building looked like, but the material that was used, whether it was going to be a brick or what is currently there. And I think Council President Lettieri can tell you the same thing. I don't know how many schematic designs we had in front of us. and they would come and they would show us. And there were 19 of us on that committee, and everybody had a different idea. So eventually, we all got down to what you see now. So what you see now, probably, I would say, is not the final product.
But I do think, to answer Frank's question, I do think that we can get an iteration that might incorporate, for example, the arch with the concrete blocks
Right.
at the Wadsworth Building and such. We could have a schematic of that, you know, some of your ideas as well as our ideas, to give it a more pleasing look. But as we said earlier, at some point, you know, if this goes past November, we would hire an architect that might be different than the one we have now. But yeah, I think it's important to have people see as close to possible what the design might be and what kind of historical elements we could put in and pieces from the existing structure that would be suitable for it. So yes, to answer your question, I think that's something that we should and can do before November.
If it's going to assist in the process and make for a convincing argument from this committee or from the town that, you know, this is a building that's worth doing, and, you know, the wrapping is important.
Totally agree.
Maybe to that point, it also has to be made clear that this is schematic design. And if it's approved, we then move into design development. And then will the public have an opportunity to contribute during design development?
Absolutely.
You need to understand that schematic design is not a final design. And that this is just for us to move forward. If we can move forward, then hire an architect of record that would design the building. The design development is going to allow for, you know, that refinement.
And just one thing, Mr. Constantino, because you had mentioned solar or green energy and things like that, and one of the pillars of the mission in our mission statement, environmental stewardship, embracing sustainability, we commit to minimizing our ecological footprint throughout the construction and operation of this firehouse by incorporating eco-friendly materials, energy-efficient systems, green practices will contribute to the well-being of our environment, promote a healthier future. So yeah, we'll absolutely take into consideration.
Would there be any grant money for that? For
There may be for that, but right now for the design, the actual building of the building, there is not.
You have to drive up to.
Is there anything else from the committee?
Mention the next meeting and mention the first public hearing.
Are you on duty?
All right, with that, our next meeting will be next Monday, August 21st, again here at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. Also the 28th, September 7th, and the first public hearing will be Monday, September 11th.
Makes life
And
easier.
for space requirements, it will either be here or at the high school auditorium. So that first public forum will be Monday, September 11th, and next week's meeting is again here, Monday, August 21st at 6 p.m. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Motion by Chuck Flanagan,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Lettieri. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none? Thank you, everyone, for your time.